Next day, the bus took me via the spectacular cactus-filled Chicamocha Canyon to Bucaramanga, heading for Santa Marta on the Atlantic coast. The first thing I needed upon arrival at Bucaramanga bus station was a quick snack. Salchichas. This turned out to be the most attractive bus station I've ever visited. Like in airports, there are separate arrival and departure areas. This is arrivals. With more than 6 hours to wait for my bus, it was nice to find that it had such a beautiful area to wait in. Fountains, flowers, hedges, lots of comfortable seats. After dark, the place really came alive, with buses heading off in all directions. Including mine. So here I go on my final overnight bus trip, 10 hours to Santa Marta. And here we are on the roof of my backpacker hostel in Santa Marta on the Atlantic coast, all ready to set off for Tayrona National Park, where I want to spend a week or so. A lot of the travel in the park is done by horse, but I walked the hour or so to my campsite. This is the beach at Arrecifes, a particularly dangerous beach. Dozens of people have been drowned here, despite the numerous warning notices. This is my campsite, very primitive, no proper showers. You just have to slop water all over yourself from a bucket. Despite being a rainforest, there'd been no actual rainfall for more than 3 months. And insects were very scarce, so it was quite difficult walking the paths each day looking for something worth filming. Fortunately, white-faced capuchin monkeys were abundant and tame. This one's trying to break the very hard husk of a coconut, without much success. Note how this juvenile uses its tail as a fifth limb in order to grasp the branch. Close to my tent, I found a group of heliconia flowers, and I knew that these would attract hummingbirds. There was even a log for me to sit on while I waited. This wasp is chewing off wood to convert into paper to build the nest. Despite its resemblance to a bee, it is actually a robber fly. Every day I had lunch in the restaurant at Arrecifes. All the food had to be brought in on the backs of mules. Hours of searching in the forest each day only turned up a few insects that I could film. Here I've spotted a group of cotton stainer bugs feeding on the seeds in a fallen fruit that's split open. Every morning it was back to the hummingbird flowers for an hour or so. This lizard was right by my tent, so easy to find. This is a group of tiny book lice on the trunk of a tree. Here I'm going to walk you along the amazingly long above ground roots leading up to a buttress that are a feature of rainforest trees all over the world. Damage to this tree branch is causing it to ooze resin, which is being collected by these stingless bees and will be used to build their nest. Despite the drought conditions, leaf-cutting ants were so conspicuous that you just couldn't miss them. Throughout the forest, large columns were crossing the paths. The ants don't actually eat the leaves, they chew them up and manufacture a compost. They then plant a fungus on the compost, and it's the fungus that the ants eat. Filming the ants in the act of cutting can be quite tricky because it often takes place high up in the tree canopy. But here I got lucky. These were cutting plants round about knee height, quite close to my tent. The act of cutting is usually quite disciplined, and each ant cuts its own particular piece. But here something's gone wrong. The ant on the right is cutting a leaf which is already partly cut through by the ant in the centre. This eventually gives rise to some dispute over ownership. The nests of leaf-cutting ants are situated deep in the ground, and it is here that the compost is made of the chewed-up leaves and the fungus is cultivated. Once the fungus has done its job, has absorbed the nutrients from the compost, then the compost is no good, and it's expelled by the ants one little bunch at a time and dropped on a midden, a sort of compost heap of spent material. I've no idea how each ant knows when it has to drop its load. The ants are bringing the material from the nest over there to the midden here. On one of the forest trails, the local Tyrone people have set up a stall selling freshly squeezed orange juice. Very welcome for the numerous people, mainly Colombians, hiking the trails. Every morning I look forward to my breakfast, which arrived on foot through the forest. Delicious, savoury or sweet pasties. Still warm. Okay. Yeah. Breakfast done, it's back to filming. These strange green objects are tree hopper bugs. And these are their nymphs. Strange spiky creatures. The ant there is feeding on honeydew secreted by the nymphs. In return for a free meal, the ants will defend them. This tube, made of resin, is the easily defended entrance to a stingless bee nest inside the tree. This is the female of the largest orb web spider in South America. Note the yellow silk of which the web is made. These tiny flies, apparently pestering her, are jackal flies. They accompany large predators such as this spider and attempt to feed on juices oozing from their prey. Because they're so tiny, the spider ignores them. They're smaller than any prey she would normally take. This one is actually crawling all over her jaws. As dusk falls, they assemble in large numbers on her body. Because of the drought, butterflies were extremely scarce, so I was fortunate to see this beautiful newly hatched swallowtail. While filming the spiders, I saw this male unknown lizard defending his territory by displaying his bright yellow dewlap. After leaving the national park, I had a meal in a small restaurant on the roadside. If you dropped any food, it was quickly recycled by the chickens. After a pleasant trip in a local bus, I'm back in the Hostel Messiah in Santa Marta. During the day, it's much too hot to stroll the streets, but after dark it's much more pleasant. Here you can have your phone repaired while you wait on the street. They have soldering irons, test meters, the lot.